Good evening and welcome to Flat Earth United Kingdom. Joining me this evening is Speck Tickles. Am I saying that right?
Yeah, Speck Tickles.
Well, I suppose the first place to start is how you find yourself in the arena of Flat Earth. I don't actually know your views. I've never asked you a direct question about where you stand on the shape of the Earth, so maybe that should be my first question. Where do you stand on the shape of the Earth?
Right now, I'm currently claiming agnostic. I've been into the flat Earth arena for about 9 months now, and spent a lot of time looking at the proofs and hanging out with the community and stuff like that. I started to challenge myself more to make sure that I was looking at things with full spectrum without having the blinders on or wanting to believe into something, and having community and social impacts to my belief system. So I kind of took a step back, and things were kind of getting toxic in certain areas, so I just wanted to reevaluate everything.
Toxic, that's a word I know. What do you mean by toxic?
A lot of politics, a lot of I started seeing patterns in behaviors that that if they weren't flat earthers, they would be abhorrent in others, and also saw a lot of indoctrination, a lot of social pressures, infighting. And then on just like the scientific level, I saw a lot of assertions without proof or evidence. I saw a lot of fallacies. I saw fallacies about talking about other people's fallacies. So yeah, I really just wanted to make sure that I wasn't basing my views purely on the environment that I was in. So I had to take a couple steps back. And
Sure. I mean, it's difficult though, I'm sure, because you're in an arena where it's very tightly knit and everybody seems to know everybody. And at some point, everyone seems to be stepping on someone else's toes. You can't please all the people all the time and all that. But you're a couple of months into actually sharing your information, having an own show. How are you finding it?
It's really interesting because I don't know if you're aware, but I used to host some of the 24/7 channels. And I didn't get a lot of visibility, but I got a lot of talk time, and I got a lot of interesting conversations with a lot of interesting people. The 24/7 thing was unsustainable, and you're working. I mean, you're working. It's like a job. I mean, there's times I would sleep just to fire up a new show, or maybe the conversation was just really good, so you'd stick around longer than you should. But so that was where really my first jump into the community. So I kind of got rushed into it almost. I was looking at YouTube videos a couple months prior, and then I found a live hangout, which happened to be the Flat Earth debates, and that was a nightmare. But it so happened that one of the guests said, "Hey, this is toxic. Let's finish this over here." And it happened to be free chat, and then that's where I found my home for, a couple months before things started going south there.
Right. I mean, I did a show on it a few months back when things were reasonably peachy with Free Chan Light, as it was at the time, which is now Poncho Pete Chan. And my intention was to discuss the progress of those channels, not knowing that the evolution would continue and they would, morph and change and develop and new people would come along. But it seems like, there's another couple of 24/7 channels that now run on Flat Earth specifically. And it's hard to know where to look. You've got a lot of live streaming. That's if you ignore the NASA propaganda that's out there.
Yeah. And there's a lot of clickbait, and there's a few channels that have popped up recently that I'm just like, where did these guys come from? They got 100 watching, and it's the first time I've seen the show. And it's not like, I mean, besides sleeping, I'm on my computer always checking out, what's in the live area. So it's not like they've been around and I just haven't seen them. So it's really bizarre to see these he's 24/7, and it's all a whole new community. I don't know where they come from. I think you were on one of those guys' shows, the Joel Benjamin guy, and
Yeah,
then
sure.
there was and then there was another guy. I can't remember his name, but he does a really good show. He's like right on top notch. Um, he has a dreadlocks. I can't remember what his name was, but I tried to get him to come on my show because he's a super interesting guy, and he brings a lot of the Afro American pop community with him. I think he's got his own podcast and stuff. So I mean, if you think about our demographic, it's pretty vanilla, you know. So it'd be nice to get, you know, other communities involved, and even other platforms. You know, if someone's streaming from Facebook, or they're doing their you know, their tweets or whatever, but it's pretty big. I mean, we're just a small niche in the broader scheme of things.
Yeah, definitely. We're in a tiny little corner of the internet. And I must admit, I was delighted when I saw Joel Benjamin do his show, because he's got a following anyway. You know, he's got his topic, and that's why I assume that's who you're talking about when you said about having 100 people in the show. But he's just happened to pick on flat Earth because it's piqued his interest. Now, like everybody, he came to it from a negative point of view. You know, he's trying to debunk it. He's trying to say it's government controlled or Illuminati controlled. And that's brilliant. I think that's wonderful, because at least he's looking at it. You know, yes, he's going to have people like me that come in and say you're wrong, but ultimately he's still looking at it. He's involved, because for every guy like him, there's another 10,000 people that aren't even the slightest bit aware of what's going on in this tiny corner of the internet. He is. So my hat's off to him.
Yeah, it's really bizarre how I came across it. A guy at my work, I used to talk conspiracy stuff to him, and he was a Muslim dude, and he's like, hey, you know, and he said it on the down low, which was really weird, because I mean, we talked some conspiracies, giants, Nephilim, 9/11, free energy weapons. I mean, we had the gambit, but when it came to, he's like, you know, there's people that think the world's flat. I'm like, get out of here, no way. The whole thing, that's stupid, everything. And then probably about 4 months later, I ran across Rob Skiba, because I'm big into Bible prophecy, Book of Enoch, stuff like that. And he was doing one of those things, but he kind of peppered in a little bit of the flat Earth. And I'm like, well, you know, maybe I should check this out. So I looked around. I ran across Dave Murphy when he did that show on that. I think it was either a Russian TV show or something like that. But I ran across that. I'm like, wow, dude. You know, they were saying some really interesting stuff, and a lot of my childhood wonder, you know, was back. And I'm like, I remember when I was a kid and my old man was showing me the boats. And he's like, see, watch it. Just keep on watching. It's going to go over the curve. And I'm like, what? You know, it just didn't, something just kind of pinches at your core, or kind of turns it the wrong way. And you're like, that doesn't make a lot of sense. And then I remember when I went on my trip to Israel, it was a straight flight from New York to Tel Aviv. And we were never over water. We were always over land. And I'm like, that, and this was way before I was a flat earther. This was 2009. And I thought that was weird, but you know, you're in the plane, you're watching the flight path on the little overhead in front of you, and you're just like, oh yeah, whatever, you know. But when I saw the flat earth map, it's a straight line. It's a straight line from New York to Tel Aviv. And you're over land the whole time. And that was the one thing that clinched it for me, where I was like, yeah, this makes more sense than all that ball earth magic and bloated numbers. And it seemed fantastical when I was, you know, in school and all this other stuff. And I remember also one of the things that, you know, kind of convinced me, you know, is just all this back history of stuff that I remember. And like I said, I'm Christian and stuff like that. And they had this picture from NASA, and it was called the Crown of Thorns, right? And it was like this beautiful picture of like a star cluster of some sort, or bolstering, you know, new galaxy forming, or some fantastical stuff. And you know, my family's Christian as well, so I shared it. And then I found one also that was called the Hand of God, right? So I'm like, cool, you know, God's hands everywhere, and He created everything. Everything's awesome. And then I shared it with my family. And then after I sent it, I went and looked at it a couple of days later, and I noticed that in the bottom hand portion, it says that this image is an artist's rendition based on data taken from XYZ telescope. And I'm like, so I just lied to my family, you know. NASA made me lie to my family because I thought it was this great thing. And yeah, so all this stuff started coming back to me, and it really added a lot of validity to flat Earth. Yeah, it wasn't math, it wasn't, you know, experimentation or anything like that. It was merely these experiences that I had a problem with, but were answered through the flat Earth.
Right. It's that childlike wonder returning as soon as you find out that there's been a deception. So I remember back in the day thinking, how is the sky blue? I think we had this conversation actually. We were talking a few days back about, you know, my point of view is that you never run out of topics in, I'll put it in quotes, flat Earth, this arena we find ourselves in. There's an endless stream of subjects to look at. And any time that I've come to the point that I thought, well, what can I make a video about today? And I've looked out the window, and that's when I came up with Why is the Sky Blue, a video about that particular topic, because you've only got to look out your window and suddenly there's 101 different things to start questioning. And off the back of that, like you say, you start questioning the things that you've already taken as read, that they are correct. I don't see that as lying, though. I mean, I see that as being mistaken or having been misled. So you haven't, you know, I spoke about this with Paula, knowledge scavenger, and she said it's all about intent. And I completely agree. It's, if you intentionally showed them that, knowing that it wasn't at all real, then yes, you could be deemed a liar. You could say that you've lied to them, but you didn't. You know, I remember talking to my nephew and pointing out the stars and pointing out the planets in the sky that were visible in the night sky, literally with her looking up. And in the aftermath of flat Earth, I didn't feel like I'd perpetrated deception on her. You know, I felt like I would have been the one deceived and was inadvertently passing on the wrong information as opposed to lying.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's the best way to put it. I felt like I really felt bad. I felt like I didn't do my homework and all that good stuff. And I consider myself, you know, I try to be honest, and especially with your family, you know. And I have a big problem when someone calls someone a liar. I see that a lot everywhere, and it shows your lack of knowledge when you call someone a liar, because you have to have that intent, and you can't prove someone's intent. Only that person knows their intent. So the best thing to go through, and I'm really trying to like modify my my attitude, and it's so easy to use these words, and people, it's so easy to get infected by the words that you speak, because it's just happenstance. It's just common to say someone's a liar because of something of a untrue fact or statement made by that person. Oh, you're a liar. Well, no, man. You know, that's a negative connotation, that, and it's unprovable. So it's always easier to be like, hey, you know, that was incorrect information, or you know, I really want to take the side of people and get rid of the things I can't prove, because when you start assuming intention, that's when you get all this infighting and all this backlash and secret, you know, meetings, and it's just ridiculous. And I have the same thing when people say proof. You know, there is no such thing as proof.
Yeah, there's no such thing as a fact either.
Yeah, exactly. It's very difficult to logically realize that some of these things that it's conditioning. I think it's conditioning. Maybe it's done through ignorance, or just you know, human nature. I wouldn't say, you know, it's a couple guys in a hot tub, you know, trying to get us to, you know, ruin our community. But yeah, it's conditioning. How easy is it to say proof? Hey, prove that to me. And No, I can't prove that to you. I can give you some evidence if you like, you know, and I can tell you what I saw from this. But there's a lot of projection as well. You know, people want to project what swayed them, and when they see that that doesn't sway you, they get angered. And when they have anger, it almost makes me think that you know somewhere deep down inside they're not confident in their belief system or their proof. You know.
Yeah, the other thing with lies is that people speak mistruths unintentionally, non-stop, all day without even realizing it. I remember I did a little video log about this. Somebody did a study. I can't reference it off the top of my head. I'm really sorry. But basically, they looked into a conversation between two people and then went back over it. And it was a 5-minute conversation to analyze where mistruths or lies had been told. And neither of them had any intention whatsoever of lying, but they both did, you know, on multiple occasions. And the same goes in a courtroom setting. I know that lots and lots of flat earth videos will use, you know, courtroom terms when they're defining things that are taken as evidence. We'll just have to use these terms, I'm afraid, Speck. But yeah, so when they're presenting evidence, you'll end up, you know, preponderance of evidence is a globebusters one. Whereas when it comes to lies, there's a far more difficult to define line when it comes to what is a reasonable lie and whether or not that lie is accepted. So in the courtroom setting, and I've experienced this firsthand, unfortunately, if you were to detail a lie that you had told and not even necessarily detail your intentions, but you were upfront about a mistruth that you had told, it wouldn't necessarily be held against your credibility if you were to detail the mistruth that you had told. It would only be if you were to try and cover your tracks, expand the lie, that obviously that would go against your credibility, because there are certain lies in certain circumstances that are just. There are just lies. And it's difficult to explain that to somebody when, you know, they just see truth and fiction or truth and lies, and if one is coming out of somebody's mouth, they must be they must have bad intentions or they must have evil intent or whatever, when the actual case is that many people tell lies to protect themselves, protect others, whatever, you know, but there isn't such a black and white system of this person is truthful, this person is lying, this is a lie. There's a massive gray area.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's just like, I mean, everybody lies. I'm sorry. And the people that say that they never tell a lie are lying because either they're lying to themselves or they're lying to you, because everybody tells lies. And it's just stupid things, you know, like, hey, you know, what did you do today? And I'm like, not much, you know, sat around, watched a movie. Well, I also got the mail. You know, if I didn't tell them I got the mail, does that make me a liar? Absolutely not. You know, it's not very rigid at all, and like you said. So yeah, we lie all the time. You know, if someone says, "Hey, what time did you get to work today?" About 7:30. You know, well, what if it's 7:31 and then 3/4? You know, does that make me a liar? So I think people can nitpick and make lies where there are not any. You know.
Yeah, it's back to intent. You know, if you can see that somebody has a purpose in deceiving, then that's a different story. Whereas if there's no intent, there's no useful reason to be wrong, then that's not a lie. You know, that's just someone being incorrect.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
I get in trouble when I tell people that I try not to lie, you know, because again, you know, human nature would say no. You would say, the normal person would say, no, I don't lie, you know, but I'm trying to be honest with myself. It's like, hey, yeah, I lie. I lie to people all the time. It's not intentional. It's over little stuff, but I try not to. I try to be as honest as possible. And a lot of people don't get that. It comes off a little raw, I think.
When it comes to the perpetration, is that a word, perpetration? I think it is.
Mm,
When it comes to the people perpetrating the lie about the globe, would you say that they have intent? I mean, I say this because of recent months, I've heard it said several times, oh, yes, there are certain people who definitely know they are lying. Do you agree?
Oh yeah, I mean there are intentional lies out there. That's for sure, and it's I think a lot of it that we have, a common problem I find, and even for myself, and I try to catch myself, is that we like to project us on other people, and I don't think we do it intentionally. That's why like really nice people always get taken advantage of, because they're projecting how they would be or how they would act in that circumstance, because they can't even fathom that there might be an evil person out there trying to get their wallet, or would lie to them, because that just seems so counterintuitive. So I think that's a big problem in trying to establish that criteria. But yeah, there are intentional lies, and they're very. I think they can be evident when the thing with NASA and stuff. I mean, how would you do intent? And the big argument from the Globers is like, why would they lie to you? And there's little reason and a lot of reason. I don't think any of those are actually going to hit home and convince them. But yeah, it was tough for me, because when I found out about flat Earth, first off, I got giddy like a kid. I was like, holy crap, and I felt like I almost laughed. I thought it was silly, kind of. But then you get on, I call it stage 2 of, the 5 stages of flat Earth. And you start to wonder, well, what else do they lie about? If they can pull this Houdini off, then what else have I been lied to? And everything becomes suspect. I mean, everything. You're talking dinosaurs, you're talking Bible, you're talking history, how old the planet is, how many people are on the planet, vaccines, pharmaceuticals, GMO. I mean, you got everything out there. And I think that's where a lot of people can, lose their mind, because it's and then you get into the mindset that they're out to get you.
I genuinely don't think, excuse me, that they are, on account of the fact that you've got the decompartmentalization of things like NASA, and it's a generations old lie. So it may very well be the case that the original perpetrators of the lie are long dead, and it's set up in such a way that there's very, very, very few people within the framework of things like NASA that are going to understand that there's a lie being perpetrated. If they've only got very limited information to work on, and if you've got hundreds, if not thousands, of subcontractors making tiny parts for an item, every single one of them is going to shill for NASA. They're going to sing the praises of NASA and automatically assume that obviously that thing's going up into space. I've made this bolt for it.
Yeah. Oh, I would have been a perpetrator of that, because I used to make computer chips for satellites, NASA satellites. So yeah, it's definitely. And when I found out about satellites and the potential that they don't exist, I'm like, but I made chips for them. What do they do with that stuff? Or is there like a robot army that are using these chips or something? It was really bizarre. Flat Earth brought up a lot of interesting past experiences, and that was a big one.
Yeah, I did the same thing in the hi-fi industry. There was a cable manufacturer that made a specific cable called Flatline Gold, and it's accredited for being used on the shuttle because it was very lightweight and specific impedances and all the rest of it. And you looked at it, the packaging, NASA affiliated packaging, and you go, wonderful, this stuff's going up into space. It must be amazing. And then you find out about flat Earth, and then you know why the sticky stuff doesn't work for more than 6 months, and because it's all a nonsense.
Yeah, it's weird, because the chips that we made were special. Instead of silicone chips, they were made from gallium arsenide, which is
that's very high tech.
Yeah, and it was interesting, because I actually broke a wafer that had I think 1,000 chips on it, and it was worth $1 million.
You broke it?
I broke it in the machine. Yeah. Yeah, there's like 15 stages or something. Each layer, there's a bunch of layers of like paths and switches. So each layer would go through the same process, and it could take up to 6 weeks on some of the higher end ones. And again, everything was this. They said that it had to be gallium arsenide because it's out in space, the extreme colds and harsh conditions up there. And that's why it had to be this certain chemical, which is is formed with like gas and some acrylic of some sort. But yeah, I was working on a machine, and I kind of bumped it, and it shattered the wafer. It was a $1 million wafer.
And what was the consequences?
Be more careful. It's weird because they do recycle broken wafers, and they can get the gold back from it. The reason why it costs, that's the street value, of the actual materials. It wasn't that much. It's probably about maybe.
Sure, I totally understand that. I'm sure the bill of materials for that stuff is virtually nothing. It's all about the process and the manufacturing and the man hours and the effort that goes into actually turning it into the end product. But I assume at that stage it wasn't actually end product anyway.
No, it was stage 5. So it went through all the processes, all the bays, they call them, 5 times. So it had 5 layers of switches and paths. And it's interesting too because
what were the chips going to be actually?
Like math coprocessors or not? They had product names to them, so we didn't actually know what they were for. But we made tons of them. I mean, there was a lot, and how many satellites are out there? So maybe they were used for other applications as well. We did have a set from the government, and every time I worked in the photo bay, so I would actually snapshot a picture of the paths and on a photo sensitive layer of film, and I'd put the chemicals on it, and then I would flash the picture on there, and then after you flash the picture, you have to make sure that all the layers add up. So you would look in the microscope at them, and there were like a couple of key features that you would have to line up through the microscope to make sure that it reached its tolerance. But one set of chips every week were government chips, and I was not allowed to look at them. And the gal would monitor everything that you did while it was in your area. So and it was it's really silly because this gal, we would all have like bunny suits on and stuff, the full on Intel bunny suit kind of thing. And there would be this little Asian chick, and she would have literally handcuffs and a briefcase, and that's what she hauled these wafers around with. And I couldn't look at them for too long. I couldn't hold them for too long. I couldn't have them in the machines and idle. I mean, it was really weird.
Yeah, that is weird. But I don't know what to ask. Handcuffed to the briefcase that these chips were leaving the factory in.
Yeah, she had to walk them through every step just to ensure that no one took a picture of whatever pattern we put on. And usually, I can even inspect the patterns before we shoot it onto the wafer. But I wasn't even allowed to do that. I had to. She had to do it. As a matter of fact, I had to leave the bay while she did it.
Wow! And like you say, you've got absolutely no idea what they're actually being used for, other than you were told that they went into satellites.
Yeah. I'm guessing they were probably government. She worked for the DoD, so yeah, I would imagine some kind of spying, weirdness.
I wasn't going to take it there, but now I will. So yeah, I can just imagine her, looking both ways. Is someone going to come along with a hacksaw and take her arm, for these government chips, whatever they are?
It was really weird, man. And I was like 19 at the time, so all that stuff just was like whatever, But looking back through, your skeptical eyes that you get when you age, it was really interesting. It's kind of cool.
So yeah, I mean, coming back to the original question, then what do you think? Do you think there are actually people on high who know full well that I won't say that the Earth is flat, that there is a deception afoot?
Um, just in let's say the 1%, or are we talking just like NASA?
Definitely not in the lower echelons of the decompartmentalized arena that NASA is.
Mhm.
The one percenters, absolutely.
Yeah, I think a handful of them do. I think they have a lot of information. I mean, how else can they be so successful? It's funny because I was thinking about this earlier today. Matter of fact, I saw someone in the side chat say, "Oh, knowledge is power," and I'm like, "How's knowledge power?" Because you have knowledge and you have wisdom, right? And these are my definitions. You can agree or not. So knowledge is you collect information, you know, and you gain knowledge, and you can do that through books or practical applications on teaching you observations, etc. But until you apply it, it's worthless. It's just sitting there in your brain. So when I think of that statement of knowledge is power, I really think is that those who have the knowledge and hoard it have all the power. It's not the actual use of the knowledge, it's the hoarding of the knowledge that gives them the power.
Right. So you're saying a bit like with diamonds, they gather the information and it absolutely, like a secret, a true secret, it absolutely will not be talked about. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, I mean, just like you know, everyone says that there's like this car out there that has a carburetor that will give you, you know, 100 miles to the gallon, but that dude got shot. You know, I think there's a lot of truth to that because when I was in, and this is a marketing thing, but when I was working for the chip manufacturer, they would have their product line mapped out for 2 or 3 years, which is odd, right? Because you've heard of Moore's law, right?
Sure. I think it's the basis for simulation theory.
Yeah. So basically, instead of Moore's law, I think that instead of Moore's law being a prediction, it was actually a map, a future outlook map of, hey, how can we get the most potential from this technology? Well, you do that by stepping it down and selling it in um, uh, incremental ways so that you can expand your profit margin. I actually think that we had, you know, 4 gigahertz processors 15 years ago, but they wanted to, you know, roll it out so that they could get the most for their money because they knew that their technology was limited. You know what I mean? So I would think that that is knowledge that is held back just on a business and marketing level. It makes a lot of sense. So why wouldn't they do that with, you know, a car or free energy or the shape of the earth, where they can, you know, take the American taxpayers' money at, you know, $50 million a day?
Yeah,
Or
I seem to remember Bob Nodell talking about hexadecimal processors, and it's a term that I'm not that genned up on computing, but I remember the term being used in the 80s and going, you know, this isn't a new term. So they must have had far more sophisticated computer processors way back when, and they've just chosen to roll out this, what is it, binary style processors until they reach their limit. Like you say, it just, that does seem to make sense. It just seems like good business sense to do it exactly like that. Because frankly, who cares about whether or not we can, you know, let's use something that's currently in actual production. So if you talk about VR, what benefit would there be to have had VR in the mid 90s for the sake of argument? You know, why not roll out rubbish game consoles and keep it, you know, stepped up at a nice steady rate so that you can sell the latest model, built-in redundancy, of course, so the thing breaks after a year.
yeah, they in manufacturing and in sales, you very well know that a lot of your initial products um, don't sell. You know, they just straight up don't sell. You have to, you know, gain momentum over time. So you're not going to throw, you know, the kitchen sink at your very first introductory model. So it makes a lot of sense to do that, but also that's also a form of conditioning. You know, when you subtly start adding fees. Like with your cable bill, they're not going to bump it up to $50, overnight, but they will do $5 every year until they get that $50. So um, and I think that's a lot of how we are conditioned as people, where we are heavily dependent on our technology. I mean, if the internet went out today, and you weren't able to Google Maps, a lot of people would be screwed. No one knows how to use a map anymore. A paper map. Who has a compass? Who has any sense of direction? And I find it interesting that this technology that is supposed to be so convenient has actually made us more stupid.
Yeah, we reference things and scratch the surface, do a quick Google search, take the top result, and that is our truth. I mean, I'm talking generically for most people. It's seldom people will do vast amounts of research and go and get out a book from the library and cross-check what they've searched online. That's hardly ever going to happen these days. Libraries are closing all over the place. And when you're on a platform that ultimately is totally controlled, it's not like they have to recall books to change and make edits on the internet. It can be done in a heartbeat, and you don't have to change something and then tell someone that you've changed it. You can just change everything. And we come back to the cable bill thing is an interesting one, because earlier on you were saying about how outraged you were at Flat Earth, whereas I didn't really have that reaction. And I think it was mostly because I wasn't watching television. I mean, I did have TV, I just didn't watch it very much. I mean, I'm going to be completely getting rid of TV. I've convinced my wife that's a good thing to do. Happy days. So yeah, but as a result, I was very open to the idea. In fact, all of those things that you described flashing through your mind, the journey that you did to Israel, did you say? Those sorts of things, when I heard Matt Powland say the words flat earth, all of those things went, yeah, that makes total sense. It always was obvious, as opposed to, this is an outrage, of course it's a globe. And I think the reason for that is because of television. You're constantly bombarded at a surface level and a subliminal level with programming for the globe, non-stop.
Yeah, it's really weird, because after Flat Earth, everything's up is suspect. And I remember when I was looking at all these I call them the transgender thing, like where everybody's a man and every man's a real woman, But you got to start looking at that stuff. You're like, I mean, they lied about the damn shape of the earth. You got to look at almost everything with like the blinders off, and you have to be really honest with yourself. And you're right that brought up all these questions of, what have I been told incorrectly and have been propagating throughout my life out of laziness or conditioning. And I find this heavy in our community on both sides of the fence, where it's a YouTube video or a Google search. And I mean, I don't want to talk poorly about somebody or people's, but I find a lot of people going to a wiki for their information. A wiki is not a credible source of information. Matter of fact, you can't even use it in your collegiate studies. Your paper would get thrown away. If you have if you make a site on a wiki page of any kind, your paper will get thrown away. They don't even allow it. So seeing all these people use the wiki like it's some sort of mecca of higher knowledge, or some library of Alexandria, it isn't, and you shouldn't use it in your statements at all. And it's just really bizarre, because it's the same with Google. Whether you use Yahoo, whether you use Jeeves or whatever those other search engines are, they all sit on the same backbone. They will send you the same. They pull the same data. They just have their own filters in there based on their marketing that for their advertisers. So yeah, you're still hitting the same source of information, but you're using different front ends. It's not a different technology. It's not different data sets or anything like that. So yeah, all this information is highly intangible. I mean, how many people know how to use a card catalog? If you
Very,
actually want to
very
research
few
something.
have ever gone through the thumb network. Very few people go to the reference library. Very few people do that.
Yeah, and when people say things like transhumanism and stuff like that, I feel like we're almost already there. I mean, how many people would die without their phone? I mean, I literally, you do the online dating thing enough, you'll see that everywhere. Name 5 things you can't live without, and a phone is like on that list every time, all the time. And even me, I was thinking about the internet. I don't use my phone for anything but phone calls. But if the internet went away, I would have nothing to do. I would have nothing to keep myself busy, and that's kind of sad, you know. So yeah, transhumanism is already here, and people are already their avatars. They're already living inside of their, digital egos. It's really interesting.
Yeah, there's something very magical about pressing the flesh, actually being in person with somebody. I mean, there's certain behaviors and they're highlighted in our community for some reason. They seem to, bad behavior seems to shine bright, and I don't know, there's a lot of turning blind eyes to bad behavior in our community. And it seems tragic when a normal human being in a normal interaction face to face just would not say or do some of the things that people in our community say and do. It just wouldn't happen. People don't seem to be able to put themselves in a position where, in the back of my mind now, I almost see it like we're sat in a bar in public and there's people listening to our conversation, and therefore it feels that way. But because it's not, because I'm actually sat in my lounge and you're not sat here in front of me and there isn't a crowd of 100 people, it isn't how it would seem. You've got this million miles of internet wire between the two people communicating, and that gives you free reign to be a complete dick, say whatever you like, be completely vicious, because it seems like there's no recourse, there's no consequences, but there is. Life is exactly the same. It's still me sat here doing this, you're still having this conversation, and the words you use and say do still have consequences. But people seem to not see that for the million miles of internet fiber optic cabling.
Yeah, it's one of my big arguments with like Facebook, and I think it does harm. I think all this, I mean, it's great. I mean, it's awesome that I can meet someone awesome like, Nathan Oakley, because I would have never met you and talked to you guys at all. Half the people I talk to online, there's no way I would have ever met them because I keep to myself. I go to work, I go home. There's not a whole lot, and you meet a lot of diverse people, and that's the rub. That's why I think it's almost conditional because when something's free, be aware. Be very aware and wonder why it's free. And that the advertising and they're making money off advertising. That's not always it. There could be, and you could overthink it, but this anti-social media, which I call it, is that you're not in front of someone. You're not putting in a great deal of effort, and not only that, but you're propagating your digital ego, not you. If I roll to your house and knock on your door, one, that showed effort on my part to come see you. It's not like I just happened to see a picture of your lunch and said, yeah, right on, dude, we got to get some of that, or you know what I mean. It takes a lot of the effort out, because all relationships are obviously give and take. You're making deposits and withdrawals on people all the time, but not in the digital universe. It's totally different. And the number one excuse for people having Facebook is, it helps me keep in touch with my family about East or whatever. And it's like, is it really? Is it? Just because you're sending some characters over some fiber optics, are you really? I mean, when's the last time someone actually sent you a handwritten letter? And good God, man, you know, I don't even think I could actually write letters anymore. You know, my handwriting is probably terrible. I know my spelling sucks. I mean, there's no spell check on the old memo pad. So it's really interesting how that works.
Oh, yeah, I've sent handwritten letters. Twice in one show. I'm referencing being in court. I sound like I'm a terrible person. It's not like that. But yeah, I've written handwritten letters to the court for various reasons. Useful trick to know how to write a proper letter, and it's a trick that lots of people just don't have that skill anymore. I mean, I receive a lot of emails, and they're just. I'm not going to name and shame anybody, but they're just awful. You know, I've worked in jobs where I was trained how to write letters, but before that, I knew the importance of, you know, formatting a letter correctly. It's just nice. It's just professional. It has a better impact. You know, when Paula was on, I think it was the show before last, we were talking in context about words as spells, and formulating a correct sentence, making it make sense, making your intentions clear, but also being concise is hard. You know, most people struggle with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's that level of intention, right? Because intention not only works with lies, but it works with other emotions as well. You know, is you're showing the intention that you are going a little extra. You're making it personal. I mean, why did people used to sign their paintings and stuff? You know, that was their signature. There's a lot to do with that. That's kind of like your glyph. You know, like, you know, if you believe in all that black magic PMR shit, yeah, you're kind of placing a little bit of your ego, your energies on that, if you will. Or you're just saying, hey, I'm standing by this picture as mine. You know, back in the day, all the carpenters and masons and tradesmen, they would stamp their product with their name. And you know, if you bought a chair from, you know, one of these you know, furniture makers or something like that, and it broke, you know, 30 years after you bought it, as long you take it back to that store, he will fix it for free because he put his name on it. And
They still do that today with Mercs. So if you buy the higher end AMG engine Mercs, there's one guy who builds the engine. You know, don't get me wrong, there's lots of guys, but each engine is built by one guy, and he gets his plaque on the product at the end. It probably stands for nothing. Mercs don't tend to be as reliable these days, but nonetheless, you know, it's a guy putting his signature to it. And it's interesting because when you talk about pictures and them being signed, it's obvious what you're being presented with if you're in an art gallery and you're looking at a portrait and it's got a signature at the bottom. Whereas that's not what we get these days. We have sophisticated computers and sophisticated graphics cards that will present a representation of something to us as opposed to an image. You know, it's not looking down a telescope or looking down a magnifying glass. It's totally different. It's being presented with representations, and representations, CGI, are what fool people, especially when they're told that they're real. You know, if you've got no reference for what's up in the sky other than what you see through your scope, and then you're told this massive scope attached to a huge graphics card will give you this image, then you've got no choice but to just accept it as being correct and accurate, you know, because you can't replicate it yourself. I'll lead where I'm going with this. I think we're going down the same path, but on the microscopic scale with things like CERN. You know, they will take you around a tour of CERN and show you these absolutely stonking enormous cameras, you know, this great big disc, this ring around the edge of the particle collider. And are you ever going to get a camera like that? Are you ever going to be able to replicate the nonsense dots and lines that come out of CERN? Probably not. And it's so true. You know, I've seen justifications for moon landings where they're using graphics cards to square the circle of the different light angles and stuff. You know, you can do anything with a graphics card.
yeah, and if you think about how CERN works, and this is to the best of my understanding, is that they don't change how the actual collider works. All they change is the way that they interpret the data, and that's all done through math. and you know, tweaking of they're basically, you know, tweaking the knobs until they see this particle that they're looking for. They're still smashing the same atoms at the same speeds. I mean, that's how that thing's built. It's a one-shot deal, you know. I'm sure they can change certain aspects of it, but you know, for the most part, they're changing the way that they're able to see this accursion or whatever and extrapolate the data.
And what particle are they looking for? You mentioned this earlier, coincidentally, with space.
Yeah, exactly.
So they're looking for the God particle. And then what was the image that you sent to your family?
Yeah, the hand of God and the crown of thorns nebula.
The hand of God. So there we go. They're the fingerprints of this religious, the paradigm that they set us up for, in my opinion. You know, you've got flat Earth that's heavily tied to Christianity. And if you look into heliocentric science and the people who are promoting it, they're tied to devil worshipping. And it seems to be a nice paradigm. It's like a two sides of the coin that have got, you know, the opposite thing on. It's hard to describe what I'm saying. It seems like on the surface that everybody's a Christian, all believing, you know, that's how it seems. And then you do a bit of research into who are these people, and lots of it's Pizzagate at the moment that's doing exactly this, laying the foundations for people to follow a path down that leads them to the fact that these people do, in many instances, worship the devil. And that's completely opposite to how you're led on the surface of the television to see these people. They're all going to churches, they all seem like good Christian folk, you know, they've got all the Christian values and they promote them in their speeches, but they're not. You know, but they're the ball believing Freemasons that are promoting that particular lie. So then when you get into flat Earth, every time I start a flat Earth debate, you've got your nonsense religious beliefs. It's like, I'm not religious. Yeah, I've had my dabbles in Christianity. At the moment, I would absolutely say I'm not a Christian. You know, it doesn't seem to get me a great deal of hatred in flat Earth, but if you approach the subject, they automatically assume that you're a Christian, you know, in spite of the fact that the people on the podium say that they are Christian. It makes no sense. It's a very complicated paradigm, but ultimately, the Bible believers are the flat earthers. That's what we're being portrayed as. And the ball believers, well, they're Luciferians. It just seems like it's turning out to be quite a neat little paradigm. And I don't buy any of it. I don't buy the religious aspects they tie, you know, I keep forgetting the name, as you say, the hand of God.
Yeah, hand of God.
Hand of God and the God particle. It's like, why call it that? Just call it Bob or Joe.
Mm-hmm. No, you're right, and they do that for a reason. And again, there's a lot of reasons why I didn't want to define myself as a flat earther, because one, there isn't a definition, and because of all the reasons that I stated before. But there's a lot of missteps going on that I don't care for. It's great if you want to have a religious conversation. One, there's poor definitions in you know, the definition of a Christian. There's poor definitions in religion, and they blanket toss these out and attach them to people nilly-willy. And flat earthers do the exact same thing. They assume someone's an atheist because they believe in NASA or evolution and all this other stuff. I see both behaviors moving towards the extreme on both sides, and I couldn't be privy to any of that. And I love the community, don't get me wrong, but I see these behaviors, and not everyone displays these, but a vast majority are definitely moving in that direction. And that's kind of why I went off and did my own thing. And it's nice because, you know, I had 20 subs when I was busting my ass on Free Channel Light, you know, every day hosting and trying to entertain people and come up with something cool to say. And then when I broke off, and I went to some of the unpopular channels, and I got banned from other channels for doing so. But one, my knowledge increased. Two, I met some legitimately neat people on the other side, like Jim Panda. You know, he can go on his tirades just like anybody else. But for the most part, he's a wealth of information because he's a fanboy. You know, so if I had an idea or some subject matter that in regards to science or NASA, that's the guy to go to. And he's perfectly nice when you're not trying to, you know, pick a side or propagate a belief system. And I learned a lot from him as well. And then I started doing my own hangouts, and you know, I don't have a lot of people watching all at one time, but I got a lot of great feedback. You know, people really enjoyed having the diversity, and some of these people, their behavior was totally different because you know, they were all used to going down the flat Earth gauntlet, so they automatically stepped into it with attitude and resolve and all this other stuff. So when I did mine and I presented myself as a neutral person, um, and you know, like I said, if it's a belief system, which I believe it is, then it's none of your business, you know, because it's kind of like my religion or my faith. So I don't have a problem telling people that I'm neutral because I'm just straight up neutral. I don't know. Matter of fact, I think it's arrogant to think that we can know. Um, but I really like that fact that there is a desire for that, and I think it's a great deal of people. I just don't have a lot of reach right now, but yeah, I mean, I have almost 200 subs now, you know, and I'm not working half as hard. I'm just, you know, I'm being legit, I'm being honest, and I'm trying to be nice, you know, and it's really difficult. I had no idea how hard it was, and how much of a target it really makes you in the community.
I definitely see James Panda or Jeremy get a lot of abuse unnecessarily. And like anybody, he can get annoyed when he's wrong, or when, you know, he's abused, when people are swearing and shouting or ganging up on him. And he's just another guy. He's just the same as you, me, anybody else. Only he's quite nice, as you say. Unlike people like Red's Rhetoric and Sly Sparkane. And when I started, that's who I had to get my information from, amidst the, you know, the abuse and the foul language and all the rest of it. That was who I had as my, you know, very what's the word? You know, they're on the attack the whole time. They're calling you an idiot the whole time. But nonetheless, that was where I drew my information from. People like Sly Sparkane. You know, as much as people would just see that guy as, you know, frustrating, I saw him as useful, same as you did with Gem Panda. I wish I'd had Gem Panda 18 months, 2 years ago, because it was just nothing but abuse. But they still knew their stuff, and that's my point with Gem Panda, and presumably yours too. A lot of these people do understand it, you know, and while, you know, it's great fun watching Jeremy when he's justifying some of the, you know, blue marble shots, and he knows exactly how they're made, and he can justify it and how the camera technology works, and he can explain it. And while he's doing that, I can see people on the other end of it getting quite annoyed, flat earthers, because he's got a justification. Whereas I hear that and think, wonderful, you know, all the more information to debunk it with. You know, the fact that you understand it and know the smear of nonsense they've layered on top, great, you know, repeat it back to me verbatim, so then I'll know it.
Yeah, it's really funny because he's actually intellectually honest as well. He's like, yeah, I know you're gonna go here with this, and I can't explain it. You know, it was a big foul up, but here's the official story. You know, about like them losing all the trajectory tapes and stuff like that. And he's like, you know, they effed up. You know, and of course he adds his own little flair to the reason why. You know, but yeah, there's a lot of great people out there, and you know, I'll tell you now, I owe a lot of people apologies because when I jumped in, I got sucked in, man, and I had a chip on my shoulder, and then you know I was buying the whole victim mentality, and a lot of it was also due to, you know, other things going on. But yeah, it's just so easy to do. But goodness gracious, step back, people, and realize that these are real human beings with real problems. You know, put yourself in their place. I mean, I even tried to reach out and be apathetic to Tim. You know, I'm like, hey, you know, this, I'm going to take him on his word. I'm going to take it on my interactions with this dude because I don't have any interactions other than what people say. Now, maybe that stuff was kind of true. I don't know. I still haven't had that much dealings with him other than, you know, listening to his trap music and you know, watching him play video games and shit. You know, so but it's really tough because it's a double-edged sword, because you don't want to look like you're colluding with known terrorists, but you want to know, hey, are these guys really terrorists? You know, is was Hitler really the bad guy in all this? You know, I mean, there's a lot of things that if you're going to be the skeptic that you say you are, then let's err on the side of caution and good judgment, and in walking in in peace and harmony, which sounds so hippie because I'm not that guy at all. But you just get so much further than when you have angst and anger, and when you're not self-correcting. But you know, I'm seeing people become what they hate, and that's sad to me, because all this stuff is unnecessary. We should be able to look past the small stuff and just, you know, support each other, you know. But I get it. It's human nature. It's the internet, and it. I don't know if it'll change, man. I really don't.
Do you would you stand by that? Is it definitely just the internet that's causing some of these behaviours, or would you say that we are far, I don't know how else to phrase this, but under policed in the flat Earth community?
Well, I think any good community, I, any good community will regulate itself. And I think when you have a fractured community, then you have many communities policing themselves. But there's no growth in that. All there is a stagnation, and all stagnation is just slow decay. And so I think I might have came in a little too early, or maybe I came in like right after the peak of growth or of community attitude or empathy or whatever you want to call it, because things were great. And maybe it's just because I didn't see all the nasty stuff that was going on in some of these other splintered colonies. But yeah, it was really different. It was a lot different. And yeah, you still had trolls, and you still had some really disgusting arguments in a lot of these chats. But for the most part, it was, at least it was an us against them kind of thing, which I still don't like now that I've grown in my understanding of you know, how this all works. And I was super naive when I came in, but now it's like we're feeding our own to the wolves. You know, we're not doing a whole lot, and a lot of it is just plain and simple pride. It just really is, and it's the lack of empathy. And I think that's manufactured. I think it's been conditioned over time through you know, this antisocial kind of stuff. That's really interesting. I love studying the brain. And there was a PBS special. It was like a 5-part special on the brain, and they had an experiment where they would have people sit in a chair, and then they would strap, you know, sensors on their head, and then they would have they would put dots on their face so that they could monitor their facial muscles, and they would stick a camera there, and they would monitor their brain and their face, and they would stick them in front of a monitor, and then they would flash human beings with that are doing certain expressions. And there'd be the guy who's like doing a funny face, and then there's the guy who's doing the sad face or the lethargic face, and they would run through all these pictures, and they would monitor the person. And they found out that the people would make that face of the person that they're seeing. And when they looked at the brain, they showed that this was an area that is often found with empathy. So they actually had to physically make that, and they would do it in micro expressions, but they would make that face, and then they would remember when they made that face how they felt, and they would show empathy towards whoever they were looking at. And you don't get that online. You know what I mean? I mean, granted, if you're on cam and you're showing your face, you'll get some of that. But for the most part, through text and all this other stuff, you're not going to show a lot of empathy. And they did the same experiment again, but they did it with people that had Botox. And when they monitored their brain waves, that area of the brain wasn't being triggered because they couldn't make that physical face because of all the toxins and the Botox. So yeah, I think it's this kind of realm that enables that a little bit better. Not only the fact that, you know, I can shut off my computer and I'm, you know, 1,000 miles away from somebody, and who cares if I made their day bad or talked about their kids or God knows what else people have said about other people. But it really is a physical, mental thing.
Yeah, it's moving away from making baseless accusations, I feel. Just claiming somebody's affiliated with some government body with absolutely no proof. That seems to be a prevalent thing. And in this instance, I have to name and shame Eric Dubay, because it seemed to all start there. Him calling people shills, and that I hope we're seeing the tail end of now. We are getting to the point where people realize it's a bit of a farce to go around naming people shills. You've even got, I think maybe it's a year ago now, but JLB making a piece saying there's no proof of it. There's just no proof that any of this has been infiltrated. And you described it as decay, with a fractured community. And that's ultimately what you have if it's just left to its own devices to rot. You don't need shills if everyone's pointing the fingers, this way and that way, saying this guy's a shill, that girl's a shill. That's how it will fracture. And that's how it has initially, at least, started to fracture, just at the point where you're getting a bit of mainstream coverage. Although, do you think the current mainstream coverage is actually any good?
On Flat Earth?
Sure.
I don't know. When I first heard about the potential for a show, the real life Flat Earther show, or whatever it was going to be called, I can't remember. But my initial gut reaction was they're going to make a mockery out of it. And a lot of people say any press is good press, and I don't totally agree with that. I mean, name one child molester who has his face on a bulletin board and say that. You know what I mean? So I really did think that it would do a disservice. I think it had a greater potential to do a disservice and make us look like and again, us, this is me in that mindset at the time, is going to make us all look stupid and not show, how the producers go, what sells. Drama sells, and drama takes away from evidence. It doesn't reinforce your evidence. That's why people do the name attacks when they don't have a leg to stand on through evidence. And they also do that through mockery. And that's where I saw that going. So I was actually glad to hear that it didn't take off. Now this conference and stuff, I think that has a little bit more potential. I would move that to because it's controlled by flat earthers. So I think they will do something tasteful with it, and it could be really cool. All the stuff in the media right now with like the basketball players and the BOB and stuff, the paranoia part of me would say, oh, well, that's them trying to get a foothold into the arena. Once they get in that arena, they're going to have some sort of scandal, like BOB, eats baby parts or sells whatever. There's going to be some sort of thing so that it would inadvertently discredit flat earthers. I don't know. I still think that it can happen, but I think that's where right now it's working in the favor of flat earth or people who are just challenging the current system, because it's bringing in a lot of people. I don't know about you, but I've been seeing a lot more traffic, and I was hoping that the community could say, hey, we've been behaving badly. We've had grudges and fractured community for too long, and when these new folks, if they come in through the YouTube door, is this how we want to present this new mindset of a greater purpose, or some sort of cohesion? So, and I'm not seeing that either. So it's really tough. I mean, I like the community a lot. I have a lot of friends here, and I really do want to help anyone that I can. And if I wrong someone, I want to make it right. There's certain people and certain things that you just can't make right. I mean, there's going to be, bad people, and there's a reason why there's a need for some of this shedding of extra skin. But right now, it's just ridiculous. There's just too many factions, and it's not good.
But on the other hand, you know, if you're going to make an omelette, you've got to break a few eggs, and seeing those fractures, as you call them, exposes some of the bad behavior. And because, back to the million miles of wire, a lot of the people who are doing this bad behavior do it right in plain sight for everybody to see. And that can't go on forever. You know, eventually there will reach a point where people start checking other people's behavior, and that will cause fractures. But that has to happen. I think it's necessary. Certainly over the last few months during the winter period, it seems to have been pretty dark and nasty within the flat earth community. But I think that's needed. You know, you need to see where the darkness is in order to, I don't know, I'm not going to put some crappy metaphor on that. That was going somewhere terrible and cheesy. So I'll stop there.
Well, it's funny that you bring that up, because I totally agree. You know, you have to separate the wheat and the chaff. I totally agree. You got to prune, you know, dead leaves and all this stuff. There are things that are holding people back, and a lot of it is ego. But then you have the manufactured stuff. I know for a fact. I know for a fact that certain individuals with channels in somewhat of a leadership role, and I know none of the leaders want to be called leaders, but I'm sorry, you got the subs, you're a leader, are creating manufactured drama. I don't know if it's for subs, I don't know if it's to derail or steal subs. I really don't know why they do it. It boggles my mind, because it's just unhealthy. That's a damn shame. And those are the people that need to go away. But the problem is that, like I said, any good community will police itself. And instead of people wondering or taking ownership or feeling, I think it's more or less the feeling that they have some sort of power. You know, like they're quick to say, oh, I unsubbed you. How dare you have Mark Sargent on your show? You know, I unsubbed you. You know, but they're not, other than that, other than a click, other than a antisocial, you know, gesture of unfriending me, they're not doing anything to improve anything. And again, you know, I'm speaking in general terms here, but it's work. You know, it's work. You're going to have to go to someone's house and help them, you know, install their front door for the community. You know what I mean? But there's none of that there. And I do find that when people do start putting in the effort and the work, I think it would be more beneficial for everybody. And you could, when they see some of these things, they might feel empowered to, you know, leave certain troublemakers and go where it's not, you know, where it's more productive. And to your analogy, like there's no such thing as darkness. All there is absence of light. So if you want to minimize the darkness, you have to increase the light, not decrease the darkness. You see what I'm saying? So in order to increase the light, you have to take all the people and you have to put some energy into it. You know, just like a light bulb. You want a brighter bulb or brighter light, put more energy into it, and it will get brighter. So
but
that's my
hope. In your example, because you were saying about people coming along, presumably when you interviewed Mark Sargent recently, and saying, oh, I hate this, I'm unsubbing you. But actions speak louder than words. In other words, their words are what on the surface people pay attention to. So they see that, oh, this person's unsubbed. It's like, I've had that so many times, it's untrue. And the chances are that the person who goes to the effort of telling you that they're unsubbing will come back. You know, they might come back without having a subscription to your channel, but they're still there. You know, when I've unsubbed people, there's been one occasion that I've actually told the person, I'm unsubbing you. Because for that, I won't even mention who it was. But for that particular person, I wanted them to be aware of that fact. You know, so that in the future, when I absolutely didn't watch their material anymore or interact with them anymore, they were aware of why. You know, and I made my point. But most people aren't like that. They will tell you that they're unsubbing because they want you to be hurt by the fact that, like you say, that they're losing your support, and it comes down to them having that little tiny bit of power. And in reality, you know, don't let the door hit you on the way out is kind of my reaction. It's stolen from insanity is sanity. In other words, I'm kind of obviously here for subs. Obviously, I want to be popular. That goes without saying. But by the same token, I'm doing what I like. If you don't like it, you're more than welcome to go somewhere else. But telling me how much you disapprove, okay, yeah, I do take criticism, but from some random commenter with no subs that I don't care about, you don't have that much power.
Yeah, and I find, I don't want to get into the philosophical of just the benefits of having a good attitude or good intention, because you'll still make mistakes, but having that good intention pays off, even when people are doing hit pieces or they're attacking you. I mean, I was in, I think it was Timmy's trap show the other day, and 2 hours previous, we were all having a good talk about, like I used to do digital stuff, multimedia and art and stuff like that. And, a couple of those guys are into it. So we had a really good conversation. Then the flat earth got brought up, and then, I'm a robot, I'm a shill, and I was getting all these attacks, and I was just laughing at it because I don't have malice. It doesn't hurt me. And that's what they want. They wanted a reaction. They even told me, they're like, you're not even reacting, so it makes me want to do it more. And I'm like, go ahead, dude. And I found when I did certain things that upset the few, the people that haven't actually gone through the painstaking of putting yourself out there, and even just firing up a hangout. Yeah, it's only 6 buttons, to get a feed going, but to get good conversation, to keep it going, to make sure that the folks in the YouTube chat are feeling appreciated, and moderating that as well, keeping the hoodlums out and the folks that want to cause distress. It's a lot of freaking work, and for someone who hasn't done it before, and you're just going to go ahead and critique like you could do it better, but you've never attempted it. It's a lot of work. But with all those good intentions, I think for every one person that unsubbed, how you can look in your analytics, I had 10 people sub me. So I think people can see that I am a fallible man, and I will always be fallible, but I have good intentions, and for whatever that is, and I don't. That's not a buy. That's not a cop out. But hopefully, people can see that in me, and I can be a little bit brighter, a light. To get people to be like, hey, this guy's got a good idea here. Maybe we should be a little more inclusive, or a little bit more understanding, or I don't know, maybe not, but it's worth a shot.
So what is your intention then? I mean, you've started doing shows. What are you hoping will be the outcome?
It's kind of funny because I never, after Free Channel Light, I was done with hangouts and all that stuff. I would, I have no problem getting on a panel, or especially if they're talking my stuff. You're talking philosophy, I'm in. You're talking free energy, I'm in. I was still for that, and I still like the community and all that good stuff. But the hangouts was very organic. I kind of just played with learning how to set up a feed for when that channel went down, so people would have a place to park. They could still chat while certain people were waking up and firing up their channels again. And then it just kind of blossomed into this thing, and I met a few good people that continually happened by anytime I started up a show. So my original intention was just to give a place for people who have been banned, or have felt displaced, or dishonored, or abandoned by other channels, a place to go and commingle. So I never really wanted subs. I never really had an agenda. I knew I'd always have to go back to work one day, and I knew that I would never be a YouTube star. And then just one day I was like, I saw Mark Sargent on his channel the other day. I'll give it a try, And he said yes. And I'm like, well, sure, okay. So I got lucky enough to interview him. I think I gave a pretty moderate to neutral questions, and I tried to make it fun. And how often can you say you got Mark Sargent to cuss on your on your hangout? You know, so it is really cool, man. I felt really lucky, you know, and I got to get a vibe for the guy. And the haters, man, these are just people. And you know, I people would say something like, oh well, he's a government agent and all this stuff. I'm like, no, he's just goofy. You know, he's just, yeah, that's who he is, man. He doesn't have any, I can't prove it, for one. So I'm going to take it on the surface of this guy came to my channel. I think I had 60 subs back then. You know, he didn't even look, he didn't even care. You know, so why don't you look at that kind of stuff before you start just making these false accusations? And check yourself, make sure it's not a jealousy thing, or some sort of internal fear mechanism that you're using to propagate, you know, what you're personifying people to be. I was lucky enough to talk to Patricia. I mean, in a normal atmosphere, and she's a real person, people. I'm sorry, she has feelings. She has bills and laundry, and takes showers and all sorts of. It's a real person, you know. Why don't you get some evidence first before you just believe all the hearsay, or make up stuff just because it fits your paranoia.
Yeah, that's a drum I banged nonstop. I mean, I've worked in an industry where I was dealing with very, very rich people at one stage, and all of them were the same. You know, some of them are more intelligent than others, some of them have got better social skills than others, but ultimately most people have got pretty much the same motivations, and you know, will converse with you on a fairly similar level. You know, don't get me wrong, I've met some pretty way out people as well. But yeah, on the whole, people are people. You know, to accuse somebody of shillery based on nothing, it's nonsense. You know, it just bugs the hell out of me. But as I said earlier, I think we're coming to the tail end of that. I think we are actually seeing that kind of farcical accusation slinging ramping up to the point where it's absurd. And then people kind of go, really? Really? As opposed to, yeah, she's definitely a CIA shill, which is what people did 12 months ago.
Yeah, and it makes them look ignorant at best, if not. I think the ones that are so quick to label someone a shill, quite possibly could be a shill. You know, why is it so easy for them? How would they know? And then the other thing I have, this is my problem with a lot of these folks, is they act like they're doing the community a service. And for the most part, that sounds, on the surface, that sounds pretty great. You know, it's the watchdog taking care of me, and they got this knowledge and that an experience, or they've seen something that I haven't, because you know, there's so many channels, so many videos, and so much going on. And you know, God, there's so much going on in private conversations. I had no idea. But then when I actually looked at it, I looked at it as, one, if you're making videos about it, then you're profiteering, whether it's just through subs or views or whatever. You're still profiteering from it, and that's lo-fi. And you're basically insulting my intelligence, that I'm not smart enough to see this stuff for myself. And that's what I have a problem with. It's like, all right, cool, dude. You know, if you want to take someone aside and say, hey, you know, I saw someone doing some fishy stuff, maybe you should, you know, keep your eyes open a little bit on when you see something like this. And I have had people do that to me, and I think I told you about it, you know, where I was just amazed at how much I didn't see. But that was all in private and stuff, you know. So these people with this, it's the intention behind it is very, the emotion is anger and hate, and I don't see how people can operate in that. That must just give them ulcers and make their day horrible. I mean, how would you do that? And the people that are profiteering from drama are the lowest forms of human that I can imagine. Why would you want to cause distress or feed that behavior? And not only that, the people that are are basically using their time as a monetary form to pursue that or be entertained by that. Why are they doing that? I don't know. I mean, why, I understand that drama sells, so let's sell them some drama. But this goes back to reinforcing the community to be like, hey, you know, let's vote with our time and our views and our strength and wanting to build people up instead of tear people down. Let's not go over there when they're talking this stuff, or someone starts talking jazz about someone and it's purely hearsay. It doesn't have any evidence. You know, ask them for the evidence. You know, stand up, say, shut up or show me evidence. But I'm not going to have that anymore because it does a detriment to, yeah, it's juicy. Oh man, I like that stuff. I mean, I ain't gonna lie, gossip is cool, man. It's entertaining. But when it's broadcasted and it's done with the intention to propagate, you know, their agenda, I have a problem with it. And it's doing a disservice to the community because it's fracturing and it's feeding poor behavior that people, that's easily to get sucked into and propagate. I can't tell you how many times, you know, someone says some gossip and then I find myself, you know, spilling it on a different channel. I did it the other day. And when I caught myself, I'm like, holy crap, you know? So I'm exactly the same way. But I'm trying to be different because I think that's
the point of gossip. The purpose of gossip is never to actually necessarily cause harm to the person you're gossiping about. It's about creating social ties. It's about, if I'm gossiping with you about Patricia Steer, it's about our connection, yours and my connection in talking to each other. It's finding those allegiances. It's not about the person you're gossiping about. There's exceptions, but on the whole, that's what it's about. It's about building a social extension through a third party that's not there. You know, you're having the common decency to gossip about them behind their back, and let's, you know, rejoice in the fact that we're doing that together. That's what gossip's all about. Whereas the fact, like you say, that it actually causes harm, that's often lost on people. They don't necessarily give that any consideration because they have no empathy. Therefore, they're not going to do all those things you list. They're not going to put themselves into that person's shoes. They're not going to consider their feelings. That would require empathy.
Yeah, and it's a great distraction against your own faults. You know, when you're talking about someone else's faults, it's usually because you want to mask your own. You know, so if someone's doing, I find it funny is that very often people project onto other people certain accusations that they themselves struggle with, you know, internally, or they know they're prone to. So it's really interesting that the type of accusations that get thrown out there. And I would be very wary of certain people that bring up, you know, some sexual immorality, you know, things involving kids and so forth. And that seems to be your go-to. You know, maybe you need to do a little, you know, self-inventory and introspection because, yeah, you know, we don't want to look at ourselves. And that is the thing that will benefit everybody. It'll benefit you undoubtedly. And it will benefit everybody undoubtedly. Because when you start to see the flaws in yourself, and the flaws in others, you have some empathy, you know.
Yeah, that rule is lovely, but it doesn't apply to 5% of the people. And yes, 95% of the people can, you know, if you're pointing a finger of accusation, you've got 4 pointing back at you. Most people will hear that and go, yeah, I can understand that. I need to reflect on my actions and think how they affect other people. And am I actually accusing somebody of something I have an internal struggle with? However, from a third party point of view, if you're watching and you hear somebody make a direct accusation, you have to question, is the person making this accusation actually guilty of what they're accusing the third party of? So that's a way of, it's not obviously always going to be the case that somebody who makes an outright, you know, a truthful accusation, people accuse people of things all the time because they have actually done them. However, you know, when there's repeated accusations that are made and there's never any evidence, you kind of have to at some point, everybody has to at some point go, maybe this person is actually guilty of the thing they're making the accusations of. But you know, it's one of those. Projection, as you call it, is rife in the flat Earth community when it comes to the accusations about people.
Oh, absolutely, and it's very self feeding. You know what I mean? It is kind of, you know, titillating and so forth. So it does feed that. But yeah, I don't know. Like you said, you know, there's probably everybody kind of dabbles into the gossip and all this stuff. But you know, there's a way that there's just simple things that you can do. It's like the devil, you know. You know, I had a hard time with this in business because, you know, you would see these patterns. I'm a pattern person, and I'm a people watcher. I just really enjoy seeing, you know, and this has been a really good social experiment for me. But you see these patterns, and not. I think everybody can say to a certain extent that, you know, let's err on the side of caution and just say, you know, how much of this is me versus this is someone else. And then the way that there's just simple things that you can do to totally fix it, and not have to take ownership or worry about a false accusation or propagating hearsay or anything like that, is just add, I think, before you say whatever the hell you're going to say. You know, because then your assertion is purely based on speculation at that point, and you stated it, and therefore you're above reproach. So you get a free ride, in my mind. I mean, you still shouldn't say that kind of crap without proof, because then it's, you know, then you're just clogging the airways with speculation, which gets you nowhere. But yeah, just mind your words, because you can fix this through good habit, good definitions, and like I said, the empathy thing is really huge. But it's hard because we project our knowledge, our understanding, our self-worth onto other people, and then we make some determining truths to ourselves about that. You know, oh, well, they're liars because of this or whatever. Well, what you're doing is you're saying that if that person was you, then, and they did this, then you would know that you were lying. So therefore they're lying. You know what I'm saying? And we project our own persona on people all the time. I do it. A lot of people do it. I don't know anyone who doesn't do it, because what else do you have to go off of, right? And it's the easiest thing to do because you know what you would do in that situation. So it's so easy to judge someone based on what you would do, but not actually understanding that that's a different individual, a different life, different morality, a different mechanism of decision making, and you don't know what happened. I mean, like I said, there's, you know, you said you'd never banned anyone, but you actually, you know, banned someone 2 years ago that you forgot about, you know. Well, then you just made a lie, you know. And there's just so many of these small things that are done just innocently. They're not done with malice or mean intent or anything like that. So just err on the side of caution, and try to give people a little bit more credit or a little bit more leeway. And just doing that alone would change our community huge.
Back to the legal terms, it's, do they have malice aforethought in what they're doing?
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, that's an open-ended rhetorical question. So yes, in other words, if somebody is perpetrating information that may not be truthful in your humble view, do they have malicious intent? Are they deliberately trying to deceive you? That's as simple as that. It just the point is that people will take a lot of what people say at face value. You know, they've said it, therefore it's true. And it's like, no, you've got to look at people's intentions. You've got to look at whether or not they are actually malicious in their intent.
Yeah, and to me, I bring up this poor example all the time, but the intention is like, who cares at that point, right? It's like if it's that, like the cracked egg thing you said, you know what I mean? If I crack that egg with pure hatred in my heart or pure love in my heart, the egg's still cracked either way. So let's deal with that And we can dick around with the intention and all this other stuff later. But, you know, after a while, if I'm, you know, littered with, egg carcasses and shell, there's a good chance that I'm probably either a sociopath or a liar, and I'll get found out. Right, let's work this. Let's let all this stuff work itself out organically. People are not stupid. We don't need people. We don't need someone on the watchtower telling me something I can see myself, or something that I'll see when it gets to my viewpoint. You know what I mean? If I'm on the ground floor and you're on the tower, well, yeah, you're going to see that stuff sooner, but I'll see it eventually. Let me have that human experience, man. Don't taint it, you know, and don't assume that what you see from that top level is actually what you see face to face, you know, on my level. Maybe I have more empathy. Maybe I walk in peace. Maybe I think that they need a little bit of understanding, or maybe if I show a little compassion. I mean, certain people are too far gone. I get that. But I've been given a lot of breaks in my time, and a lot of people that had no reason to forgive me did so. So, and that made me a better person, you know, and you appreciate that. And then when you can afford that to someone else, it makes you feel better about the forgiveness that you got, you know, and it's one of those things that's self-reinforcing, and it doesn't decay. It only gives, it grows over time. Whereas, you know, malice and accusations and hearsay and gossip and all this stuff, it only, instead of being stagnant at that point, you're being a catalyst of decay. I don't think anyone wants to do that intentionally.
I don't normally read out comments from the chat, but I'm going to read out John Watson's comment. So, it's just disappeared the page. Let's just get it back a little bit. So he says, it's the internet, ... You don't have to feel anything for anyone, but if you do get a sudden urge to give a globe a big sloppy kiss, then knock yourself out, which is funny, but I disagree. You know, the fact that it's the internet doesn't mean that you don't have to have feelings for people. And he's essentially saying in the first part of his statement that you don't have to feel anything for anyone. Well, I kind of disagree. You know, you still have to have a social standard, regardless of the fact that you're dealing with people on the internet. I thought that was the point of what we were trying to say on the show. But there we go. Obviously lost on John Watson.
Yeah, and how often does that dude get angry? I mean, he's been angry at me several times. So yeah, you can't help but have a feeling of injustice, or of malice, or happiness, or a community, and all these things. I mean, a lot of people give me a lot of joy. I remember my first time on FreeChan, and I was doing my I have a spiel that probably comes up too often, but when people talk about purpose, I've done a lot of logical constructs to kind of determine what purpose is and all this other stuff. So that's my philosophical bag at that point. And it was my first time on FreeChan, and I got on there, and I did my little spiel, and when the next day I got an email from the Scarecrow. Never met the dude before, and he's like, dude, what you said to me really made a lot of sense. I got a lot of thinking to do, and I appreciate you, man. And I was like, right on. You know, how could you not get joy from that? Because you're just being you at that point. And you are putting yourself out there when you get on these panels and stuff. And I probably shared too much on a few of them. But yeah, there is a lot of feeling involved. And I think if you were actually to take away all of that emotion and stuff, I don't think anyone would be here, because you're either here to cause trouble because you're an angry individual, or you're here to bring knowledge and community. It's one or the other, and that's it. If you didn't have those feelings, or you didn't get those feelings reinforced through your interactions in the community, then you wouldn't be here. You'd be where everyone else is, on their phone taking pictures of their lunch. So, you know.
For sure. Was there anything you wanted to plug or give your channel name? I know it's obviously been showing at the bottom as you've been speaking, but if you want to plug your channel or anything else that you want to talk about before we round out the show, that'd be great.
I have an interview, and like I said, most of this stuff's unplanned, but I have an interview with Persian Scribe on his book in a couple hours on my channel. So if people can't make it, definitely check out the recording afterwards, and give some support to someone who's in this community who's you know trying to make his way and stuff. Let's support our folks. Whether someone's trying to sell keychains or not, even if you don't buy one, like, subscribe, talk about it. Anything good or bad, it's still good to support our folks. So yeah, that's the only thing I got going on. I've considered trying to do a community roundtable that I think I told you about, but that's going to be in limbo for a while because I don't know if I have the heart for it right now, but we'll see. But I appreciate it, and definitely, like I said, I was really surprised that you asked me on, and like I said, it really is an honor to be here because I respect what you're trying to do, and regardless of the hearsay that goes on out there, sorry to say, Nathan is a real human being. He has a life and feelings, and he gets frustrated and all this stuff. So, like I said, it's really nice to be able to connect with you prior to this, but to actually be here is very humbling. I appreciate it.
Well, I've had you on because you've made a good impression. I've watched what you've been doing. I've been watching your shows, and you're a good guy. You make a lot of sense in what you say. So there's, it makes every sense to have you on and talk to you because you're a fascinating person. I got lots and lots of compliments about having you on. That said, you're catching flack already. There's something like 102 thumbs down on this show while it's been live. So you're hitting a nerve somewhere. That's a good sign. You've obviously created an impression enough to generate some hatred, which means you're getting close to the target. So that's a very, very good thing. I think on that note, I'll say a massive, massive thank you to you, Speck. You've been a wonderful guest. So thank you very much for being on Flat Earth United Kingdom.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Thank you.
It's been wonderful. So thanks again. And to all of you in the live chat or watching the rerun of this show, be sure to like, leave a comment below and subscribe. I've been Nathan Oakley. I'll see you all in the next video.